God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the I Don't Belong Here show, and I am your host, Samantha Beningo. I am a behavioral scientist, a career psychotherapist, a 6-year PhD candidate in clinical psychology, a master's level psychologist and counselor, and I am here today breaking down the Karen Read case. Obviously, there is a ton going on right now in the case, but one of the most hotly contested issues from the start has been whether or not Jen McCabe Googled "house long to die in cold" at 2:27 a.m. on the early morning hours of January 29th, 2022. The Commonwealth has already introduced 2 cell phone experts, Ian Whiffen and Jessica Hyde, up to this point in Karen Read's second trial. So we have those testimonies to refer to try to understand their argument, which is that Jen McCabe not only didn't search at that time, but that she also didn't delete that search, though they admit it was found in a deleted state. Now, we do have Richard Green, the defense's expert, his testimony from the last trial. So I went back and I looked at his testimony more recently. And as you are listening to these 2 men testify, who do you think is more credible? Or maybe they're both credible and they believe what they're saying, they just have a difference of opinion. So keep those questions in your mind as we go through the testimonies of Ian Whiffen and Richard Green. And to be fair, just like if we were the jury in this case, we'll start with Ian Whiffen because the Commonwealth goes first. Now, just one more thing before we get started. So we're going to be talking about a browser state DB. In particular, the Safari browser state DB. And this refers to a database within a web browser that stores information about the user's browsing activity and active state, such as open tabs, URL addresses, and recent searches. The purpose is to allow the user to return to whatever they were doing, even if they've exited, moved away from the app, or suspended the app. One more thing you need to be aware of. The file that Richard Green found that was deleted was a WAL file. Now, a WAL file stands for write ahead log. And the purpose of the write ahead log, which is a temporary file, is to ensure that if your phone crashes, you will be able to go right back to where you were before. These are important details to understanding what we're going to be talking about here.
Okay. The query revolved around a database called browserstate.db. Browserstate stores information about Safari internet browser and about the tabs that the user has either had open or has open.
Wait a minute. I'm sorry.
Fundamentally, in this presentation...
Wait a minute. I can't help but point this out. Note that this is not the iOS version from Jen's iPhone. All right, let's keep going.
I wanted to include information from iOS 14 and earlier. iOS 14 is not the version of iOS that was on Jen McCabe's phone, but iOS 14 has an easier way to understand how this database works. And then I can move on to iOS 15, which was the device, or was the version installed on Jen McCabe's phone. And hopefully by that point, it'll be clearer how this information is being populated on the device.
Could you tell us what iOS means?
iOS is Apple's proprietary operating system available on iPhones.
Thank you.
Fundamentally, the browserstate.db tabs table is shown, hopefully I can show this on here, in the top here. The real database has many more fields, but these are the fields which are important for the demonstration to just see the row ID, the timestamp that's recorded, the URL or the web address and the title of the page. And the example at the side there, you can see there's the browser is open, but there is no tab actually in focus at this time.
Can I take us just a little bit back so we can put this in context?
Yes.
When you are doing internet searches on your phone and you hit Safari or Google or whatever search engine you're going to use, does it create a tab?
It doesn't create a tab just by opening the application, but there may be tabs already open in the background when you start the application, and then you can tell it to create further tabs.
So if I have a phone, can I have a number of different tabs on my phone at the same time if I search for different things throughout the day?
Correct. You can have hundreds of tabs open.
Do tabs stay open forever, or can you close them?
They stay open until you close them.
So if you look at your phone and you have a number of different tabs, and say, for example, I start with one tab, I'm looking for the local football score. Can I reuse that same tab for some other search, or do I have to use a new tab to start a new search?
You could use that tab for as long as you wanted, or create a new tab to do additional searches while maintaining the original tab in its current state.
And so what you're trying to demonstrate to the jury is identifying a time on one of these tabs where a particular search was made.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained as to form.
Could you explain this demonstration as it relates to tabs on these internet searches? What are we actually trying to learn?
So as I showed, there's a field in this table called timestamp. It's actually called last viewed timestamp. I wanted to prove or to demonstrate what that timestamp means, how that timestamp gets populated, and how it's relevant or...
Just note, he wants to prove this to us. So he has very clear motives. Keep that in mind.
irrelevant to a case.
So if I have one or many tabs open on my phone, each tab will have its own timestamp?
Correct.
And the URL, that's whatever I look up, what I search on the search engine?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll allow that. Is that what's looked at?
That's correct. The URL is the address of the page that's being viewed.
So if I have a tab open and I use it continuously, 3, 4, 5, 10 times, will the timestamp change?
No, it will not.
And is that what you're explaining to us now?
Correct. That's part of the demonstration and presentation.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
All right, let's just stop and let's logically consider what Mr. Ian Whiffen is telling us here. Whether it's true or not, I'm not making that suggestion right now. I'm just asking you to consider what he's saying. He is saying that even if I spent the next 10 years, which wouldn't happen, obviously, but let's say 2 years. Some people keep their iPhones for years, okay? So let's say that I don't even realize that I can close out a search. So I've got hundreds of tabs open on my phone, or I just keep using the same one over and over and over again for the entire time that I have this phone. Ian Whiffen is saying that if I only ever use the same tab, every single one of those searches is going to be at the same time, the original time that I opened the tab. Common sense wise, given everything that you have ever learned about computers, technology, your cell phone, Apple, iOS, just from your own experience, forget about what's logical in terms of science. Does this make sense to you? That's the question I'm asking.
In this instance, at 10 a.m., which is shown in the top of the device there, we can see I visit firstpage.com as an example website. At that time, a row is created in the database that shows row ID 1 with the timestamp 10 a.m. when the page was opened. The URL and the title are relevant to the page that was visited, so firstpage.com. A minute later, excuse me, I now use the same tab to visit secondpage.com. What actually happens in the database at this point in time, is the first record is updated with new information. So we continue to see row ID 1. We continue to see the timestamp that the tab was opened at 10 a.m. And we now see the URL and the title that are related to the secondpage.com website. So I've shown it here. The first one is red to show that's no longer a live record. It's been replaced by the new record that's underneath it in black. A minute later again, I can visit thirdpage.com. And at that point, the record's updated a further time. So we still see that it's row ID 1, because no new rows are being created. We're just simply updating the existing rows. So we still have row ID 1, we still have 10 a.m. as the timestamp, and we have the URL and the title that show thirdpage.com instead.
Mr. Whiffen, so in the URL column, there are 3 different searches?
Yes, this is 3 different pages that have been visited within the same tab.
And in the data, it has 3 timestamps, but they're all the same.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
This database is not monitoring web navigation events. It's purely monitoring the tab events. So when the tab's brought into focus or when the tab's created is the only timestamp that's relevant here.
Thank you.
Wait a minute. So he is saying the last viewed, consider this. It's called, he keeps referencing it as the last viewed timestamp. Okay, that's what he's saying. This is the last viewed timestamp. And what he's saying is that all that matters, all that's relevant is when the tab was first opened or brought into focus. Okay, when the tab was first opened, or brought into focus. Brought into focus, because remember, it's the last viewed. Okay, everyone's on the same page? We know what we're talking about? All right, let's go.
From a non-forensic point of view, if I was looking at this database in a regular database viewing tool, all I would see is the black record at the bottom. I wouldn't see the other 2 records because they've been essentially overwritten by the third record. If I was to use a forensic tool, though, then I would see all of these records because the forensic tool is designed to find the older versions of these records that have been replaced. So again, from a forensic point of view, I would see all of these records, I would see all the different URLs, and I would see the same timestamp and the same row ID for all of them. This fundamentally changed in iOS 15.
Okay.
And I've tested this on multiple versions of iOS 15, 16, 17, and 18, including iOS 15.2.1, which is the same version of iOS installed on Jen McCabe's phone. In this case, the data is not written to the database immediately. So I've tried to show here that we have some in-memory variables, so essentially a short-term memory that the device knows exist, but aren't written to the database yet, so they're not written long-term. So in this case, if at 10 a.m. I go to firstpage.com, we see that the in-memory variable for timestamp URL and title are updated to show a 10 a.m. timestamp and the firstpage.com information. But you can see at the bottom, I still have the browser state tabs table, and nothing has been written to that database at this time.
So can I ask you a question about this browser state DB? What does that mean? What does that tell us?
The browser state.db is just the name of the database that Apple are using to monitor the tab activity on the device.
Will a cell phone have a number of different databases it will send information to, or is it all one database?
There are hundreds or thousands of databases, depending on what applications are installed on the device. Each database typically targets a different application or a different feature.
Can information, like information from a URL or a Google search or a Safari search, can it leave data on different databases, or does it always go to one database?
It can leave on different databases, for sure.
Thank you.
So again, to continue this example, if I now go to secondpage.com a minute later, we can see that now the in-memory variable is updated. So the timestamp still remains 10 a.m., the same as it did previously on iOS 14, but the URL and the title are updated to reflect the current web page that's being viewed. Again, nothing has been written to the browser state database. I can go to thirdpage.com. Again, we see the in-memory variables for the URL and the title are updated, but the timestamp still remains the time that this tab was brought into focus or created, not the time that the navigational event occurred. Still, nothing's been written to the browser state database, and it's not until you actually close the tab that the information gets removed from the in-memory variables and written into the database. And at that point, the information written to the database is whatever was in the in-memory variable. So right now, all we have is a single record in the database that shows the 10 a.m. timestamp. That's when the tab was opened. And we have the thirdpage.com URL and title information, which is the most recent web page visited in that tab. It wouldn't matter whether I was looking at this data using a regular database tool or a forensic database tool. The only record that I will see is this particular record. There may be multiple versions of this record, but still would only show me this timestamp and this URL information because this is the only information that was ever committed to the database.
Okay. Just to be 100% clear, Ian Whiffen is saying that the timestamp that was on the recovered file from Richard Green was the last viewed timestamp of the tab time. So if you don't know what those times are from, you would conflate the two. You would put the last viewed URL address with the time that the tab was first opened. And even if they had, been a year apart, they would look to you on the surface to be the original timestamp that you open the tab with the most recent search. Okay. And they're arguing, Ian Whiffen is arguing that that's what happened here, that at some point later on, just before Jen McCabe closed the tab, which was at 6:20 something or whatever in the morning, that later search was connected with the time that she first opened Safari, that particular Safari tab. Okay, so that's what he's saying. Now we want to see what is Richard Green saying.
And is it helpful to you when evaluating artifacts?
Certainly, yeah. Just by nature of it, we'll find a lot of the newest artifacts in that WAL file.
Now, how do you determine the timing in terms of the timestamp on the browserstate.db WAL file?
Sure. So the WAL file has different rows and columns. You can kind of think of it as an Excel spreadsheet. And in this one particular column, it was a time column. That'd be the nature of the data going into it. And this the heading on this particular one was last viewed time.
Okay. Regarding that Google search for HOS long, and I say HOS, HOS long to dry and cold, found in the browser state DB WAL file, what was the date and time for that artifact?
Sure. So that's recorded in what's called an Apicocoa time, and it's actually the number of seconds since January 1st, 2001. So you end up with this large number, but that gets converted to present to us where we get the January 29th, 2022 at 2:27 in the morning.
The specific, do you remember the number of seconds after?
I believe it's 40 seconds.
2:27, 40 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay. And in what state did you find that artifact?
Yeah, so the specific artifact, or it comes from a record, and the record number on this is 4028, I believe, and it was in a deleted state.
Okay. Now, what would you normally expect to find along with the artifact search?
So you'd have the date and time, the URL, which the way the URL presents itself, we know that it's a Google search, but you also see a history of other places that tab has been.
And with this particular artifact, did you learn the full internet history of websites related to that record?
No, that wasn't possible. We were only able to get the one website. I would say,
And I'm sorry,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I interrupted you. Sorry.
Well, no, so we definitely got the one artifact, the Google search, and we have the time related to it, but we do not know everywhere else that tab had been.
What significance was there to you about the fact that the full internet history related to that record could not be recovered?
Well, I wanted to do a little deeper dive into that, and so I used some various other database specific tools. One was called Belkasoft X, which has an excellent database viewer in it. Sanderson Forensics, which is known to specialize in this type of work, and
ArtX?
I'm sorry?
ArtX?
You saved me. Yes, ArtX, which is a program known in the community for research.
And how did you sort of cross-reference the three of those together? How did you use them?
Yeah, so all three of those tools, along with Axiom and Cellbrite, which I did, they do have a low-level SQL viewer as well. So I looked at the data with all 5 of those tools, and I found it to be consistent amongst all the tools.
And in addition to using those tools, what else did you do?
So I wanted to get a little more context. One thing with this artifact, it is deleted. And one thing about deleted data, sometimes you get it all back, sometimes you don't, sometimes you get a fragment. Deleted data makes it very difficult to give you the whole picture of what's happening. So in this particular case, I wanted to see what other artifacts were around this time as it related to web history, and particularly this browser database file.
And so what do you compare the 227 AM search to in order to gain more information?
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
What the information was. So what we found is that when we looked at a particular URL, a particular website that was visited, and then searched using that URL, the browser state database entry is the last entry in all of that. So we could see searches, videos playing. There's an artifact called knowledge C that records the user's activity, but the browser state is the very last entry on the items that we observed.
And did you find other examples of that you can speak to before this jury?
Yes, I believe we have one printed out there.
Okay. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Okay.
I placed the document before you, sir. If you could familiarize yourself with that and look up at me when you're done.
I have it.
What is it?
Okay, so this is another screenshot from the Axiom program. And it is showing a search that we conducted for raining men. And then it takes that search, and we have a couple different items on there. We set the date to begin in 1970 and ending in 2100. In other words, we only wanted to see artifacts that had dates associated with them. And then we listed them from the newest date to the oldest date. And this particular one, again, it ends up with the Safari suspended tabs artifact being the very last in the series of dates and times.
All right, I'd like to go through that, but first I'd offer it into evidence, Your Honor.
Do you need the light on, sir, or are you okay?
No, I'm fine, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you much. I can certainly do this. So we are looking at here web-related history, and also I have the filter turned on for application usage because there's some log files, sort files that the iPhone keeps track of to record user interactions, and that can give us a idea of the history as well. And then, as I mentioned, we have it filtered so that it's only showing dates, that dates existed, and we took the earliest possible date to a date way in the future. And then it's listed, and next to the date and time, you'll see a little arrow, and it's skinny at the top and big at the bottom. That tells you it's going from smallest, earliest time to latest time. And this particular view is showing us the last of that series, because what's relevant and really important here is that the Safari suspended state tabs ends up being the last of the entries related to that, not one of the beginning of the entries related to that.
What is the significance of the Safari?
Is that the Safari suspended state tabs ends up being the last of the entries related to that, not one of the beginning of the entries related to that.
Oh.
And what is the significance of the Safari state tab being the last entry? What does that tell you?
Yeah, well, so it tells us the internet history happened before that, and the purpose of this tab on at least this particular iPhone with this very specific iOS version is to record the state of that tab when the user left that. And the whole purpose of that is if you're on Safari, you're on a website and say you have to take a phone call or answer a text message and you navigate away from the Safari app, when you come back, it remembers where you were and allows you to pick off from there. It also allows you to hit the tab button and see what other tabs you might have open and navigate to one of those tabs.
Given the timestamp of 2:27 and 38 seconds on January 29th for that Safari suspended state tab with the It's Raining Men, what did that tell you about the timing of when It's Raining Men was accessed by the user?
Yeah, well, so the indications would be that that tab was brought up and then went away from to do another tab. So it can happen less than a second. It doesn't take long to open up a tab and start a new tab. Can be done very quickly.
I'm not really phrasing this the right way to get
Okay.
what I want. What I want is the timing of the interaction with It's Raining Men.
I see.
As an iPhone user, when did that happen?
Well, certainly, all the activity that we have is all prior to the recording of this that timestamp in the browser state.
All right, now, with regard to this
see
particular
what they're
example
asking.
where the browser state DB is the last entry, so the activity happened before, was that unique on this phone, or were there many examples of this?
No, I found many examples of this exact behavior.
What he is saying is that there were dozens of examples where Jen opened up Safari, looked at whatever was on the screen, and then hit new tab. Because the state of this YouTube tab that he's showing us just before the alleged 227 Google search, the Safari Google search, was exactly that. It had been opened for like a second, and then a new tab was opened instead of, in other words, closing that YouTube tab. She just opened up a new tab to start something else. And there were dozens and dozens of examples of that exact behavior elsewhere.
Your findings in researching these issues and how this user used this iPhone with this iOS. Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty as to the timing of that search for how long to die in cold?
Objection.
Sustained.
Do you have an opinion as to the timing of that first search for how long to die in cold?
Yes, I do.
What is that opinion?
That would have happened at or before January 29, 2022 at 2:27:40 a.m. in the morning.
And what is the basis for your opinion?
Again, by how this particular phone operates with that exact operating system and comparing to other data on that phone and the way it presented it out, itself is all consistent with that search happening at or before that time.
And what opinions or conclusions did you reach regarding how, if any, how the 2:27 a.m. search was deleted?
Well, we know that that's in a deleted state. And importantly on that phone is when I say, I keep using the proverbial we, I found a lot of other that would have been used or deleted artifacts between midnight and the early mornings on January 29, 2022.
AM or so. What percentage of calls were deleted on Jen McCabe's phone within that time period?
Yeah, so we found no live data, so 100% of them would have been deleted.
Now, are you aware of the term spontaneous deletion?
No, sir. I know what the individual words mean, but in relation to digital forensics, I'm not familiar with that term.
Okay, so this is very interesting. Did you catch what he said? So what Richard Green is telling us is, unlike Ian Whiffen, and actually in many ways, he's saying the opposite. He is saying that the way that these tabs are showing up, according to this particular phone and iOS system, and according to the behavior of Jennifer McCabe on this phone at that point, what had come up previously was that the search time, the time viewed or time visited that was attached to her Safari Google search behavior was actually the last time, not the first time. He also insinuates that the 623 and 624 Google searches are a completely separate tab.
Was it possible that the search for How Long to Die in the Cold at 6:24 a.m. was the most recent search completed in the tab?
Oh, well, not in that tab, but I certainly agree with you that there was a second search done at around that time.
Is it possible that the URL field, which has the website name, was updated to the newest search while the timestamp retained the original search? Is that possible?
No, not the way on this particular phone in this particular iOS, and also with the user interacted with it, that it would have been at the 227 or before. The way this very specific iOS was happening, that is consistent with all the other ones that I observed out there on the phone related to specific web searches and activity.
Was it possible that the search for How Long to Die in the Cold at 6:24 a.m. was the most recent search completed in the tab?
Oh, well, not in that tab, but I certainly agree with you that there was a second search done at around that time.
Now, is it also possible that the search that you assert took place at 2:27 and 40 seconds in the morning is the same as the search that took place at 6:24:51 a.m. for that same search?
Yeah, that's inconsistent with the actual data I'm seeing on this actual phone with this precise iOS version.
Now, regardless of who you believe or why, here's an important detail that I'm going to throw out there, okay? One of the things that Adam Lally does on redirect, one of the first things, I think, to Richard Green.
Do you know who Miss Jessica Hyde is?
I do.
Are you aware that she wrote a report in relation to this case?
Yes.
Specifically in regard to the Google searches from Ms. McCabe's phone that you were just talking about?
Yes, sir. It was very specific about that search.
And have you had a chance to review that report?
I have.
You also know who Ian Whiffen is?
Certainly, yes.
And are you aware that he wrote several reports or submitted several items in relation to, again, the exact topic that you're testifying about in relation to the Google searches on Ms. McCabe's phone?
Yes, sir. I understand that.
And have you had a chance to review those materials as well?
Yes, sir.
You understand that they both disagree with what your opinion is in relation to those searches?
I absolutely understand that, sir.
Maybe it's the nerd in me who understands what a big deal it would be to go up against my science idol testifying against her. Basically, that puts me on her radar as the thorn in her side, the person who's discrediting her, making her look bad. That's not who I want to be. That's not how I want her to know me. So I'm sure Richard Green does not want to be the guy that Ian Whiffen forever knows in this very public trial is making him look bad, right? Because Ian Whiffen's supposed to be this, larger than life figure for Celebrite. And the other thing that we have to keep in mind, I don't think that we can just ignore this. What are the motives here? Okay, everybody's getting paid, right? But think about it. Celebrite, they make all of their money from police. Who are their bread and butter? Cops, the DA's office. How many times does the DA's office use Celebrite in their cases? So Ian Whiffen has a very real personal investment in being right in this instance.
Now, once data from an iPhone is properly extracted and you get a hash value, then the examiners of the data seek to pass and decode the data to try and make some sense of the data in a more user-friendly format so that a report can be created for investigators, correct?
Correct.
Do you recall preparing a report for the iPhone belonging to Jen McCabe dated December 2024?
I do, yes.
And in that report, you discussed your views of a Google search of House Long to Die in the Cold, correct?
Correct.
And in that report, you rendered various conclusions about that Google search, correct?
Correct.
And you rendered various conclusions about what is called a timestamp.
Correct.
And the timestamp that was in question was 2:27:40 a.m. on January 29th on Jen McCabe's phone, correct?
Correct.
And the question that you were looking at is that timestamp that appeared in the data, that timestamp of 2:27:40 a.m., whether that belonged to the Google search, House Long to Die in the Cold, correct?
Correct.
Let's go back to the 2:27:40 timestamp and the question of whether that timestamp is associated with a Google search, House Long to Die in the Cold. You understand there is a dispute as to whether that search was performed at 2:27:40 a.m. as the timestamp states, or whether that was performed later in the morning, say around 6:23 a.m., correct?
Correct.
You understand there's a dispute.
Yes.
And do you understand that the defense asserts that that timestamp means what it says, the Google search occurred at 2:27:40 a.m.?
Thank you.
I'm going to allow it. Do you understand that?
I do.
I didn't hear your answer, sir.
I understand.
You understand that?
Yes.
So There are various data forensic tools, are there not, to evaluate what is called an artifact, this timestamp, correct?
Correct.
And those data forensic tools include Celebrite tools, your company's tools.
Yes.
And some of those Celebrite tools are called Physical Analyzer.
Correct.
And then you have another tool, I believe, called Insights.
Insights is a suite that includes Physical Analyzer.
Okay.
But yes,
So it's Insights is a
it's
suite.
essentially the same tool.
Essentially the same tool. So does Insight, well, essentially, but they're two different tools, correct?
They're two different versions of the same tool.
Thank you. Two different versions of the same tool.
Yes.
But there are other tools from other companies, are there not, sir?
There are.
And a competitor of Celebrite that can be used to analyze that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp and to potentially resolve that dispute of whether the Google search "How long to die in the cold" occurred at 2:27:40 a.m. or later at 6:23 or so a.m. There's other companies and tools that can be used for that, correct?
Correct.
And isn't one of the companies that can be used a competitor of Celebrite called Magnet Forensics?
Correct.
And they have a tool called Axiom, A-X-I-O-M, that evaluates questions such as this, correct?
They do.
And is Magnet Forensics a reputable company?
They are.
Am I correct that yesterday you essentially said that as of today, no Celebrite tool, no Insight suite such as Physical Analyzer, today shows that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp?
Correct. If you use any version from the last approximately year, that timestamp won't show up.
It won't show up as you sit here today.
Correct.
But that's not always been the case
Correct.
with regard to Celebrite forensic tools, correct?
Correct.
As a matter of fact, in the first proceeding in this case, in June of 2024, when you testified under oath, the situation with the forensic tools was Celebrite Forensics Insights did not show the 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp, but another version of Physical Analyzer did show it, correct?
Correct.
And that second program, that second tool, Physical Analyzer, not only showed it at 2:27:40 a.m., but it showed it as a deleted state, correct?
It's a deleted record, yes.
A deleted record.
Yes.
Did you mention that yesterday in your direct testimony?
I don't believe so.
You don't believe so?
No, we changed it since then.
Exactly. You changed it since then.
Yes.
Your company removed it
Yes.
after the first trial.
Before the first trial.
Well, you removed it from one tool before the first trial, but you didn't remove it from the other Physical Analyzer program, did you?
Up until the following version was released.
No, I'm talking about the time of trial when you were testifying.
I appreciate that. There's some complexities with how we released the software, which resulted in one being released several weeks later and one being released several weeks earlier.
At the time of trial,
Yes.
last year in June, when you were testifying under oath, one of the Celebrite tools showed the timestamp of 2:27:40 a.m., correct?
Correct.
But that timestamp doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't exist today, does it?
Correct.
Celebrite removed it.
Yes.
All right,
You mentioned...
could I see Counselor Cybar for just a minute,
Yes, Your Honor.
please? Go ahead, Mr. Leslie.
Thank you, Your Honor. So with regard to the first proceeding, there was one Celebrite forensic tool that still showed the 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp,
Correct.
and it was shown in a deleted state.
The record was deleted, yes.
The record was deleted. And then after that, Celebrite outright removed the timestamp from so none of its programs had. Correct?
Again, if I could explain a little bit about how it works.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
If you could just respond to my question. Is that correct?
The timestamp's been removed, yes.
However, the competitor of Celebrite that we just talked about, Magnet Forensics Axiom,
Yes.
that program at the first proceeding showed the 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp, correct?
Correct.
And as a matter of fact, as you sit here today, the Magnet Forensics program, Axiom, still shows the 2:27:04 a.m. timestamp, correct?
As far as I know, yes.
And Magnet Forensics Axiom is a reputable company, correct?
Correct.
Celebrite removed that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp, which is in a deleted state, in response to issues raised in the first proceeding, correct?
It was changed because of the research that I did, and that was verified by the Forensic Research Group.
But the issue arose because of what had come up in the first proceeding, correct?
In the first investigation prior to the proceeding, yes.
In the first investigation in this case, correct?
Yes.
So Celebrite, after the first proceeding, after the investigation, just outright went and removed the timestamp.
It's not unusual to change the
I
code.
didn't ask if it, I just asked whether
Yep,
they
we removed it.
But Magnet Forensic Axiom still shows that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp, right?
Again, they refer to it differently, which is why they can
But they
do that.
still show it.
They do still show it.
Can you just finish the answer?
So,
Sorry. Just let him finish the answer. Is that what you said, Mr. Mayor?
yeah, my apologies, but I'm having trouble hearing, but I'll pause more just to make sure you're done. In that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp, the dispute is whether it's associated with the search "How Long to Die in the Cold," correct?
Correct.
Let's talk a little bit more about the first proceeding in this case. In terms of your testimony under oath in that first proceeding, do you recall stating that it was your opinion as to whether that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp was associated or not with the Google search "How Long to Die in the Cold"?
I believe so.
Right, so you called it your opinion.
Yes, probably.
You didn't describe it as a fact, you described it as your opinion, correct?
Correct.
Because you realize that there are other fair interpretations of that timestamp and when the Google search occurred, correct?
I think even if I believe it's a fact, it's my opinion.
Right, so it's your opinion.
Yes.
So, you also, do you recall stating that there's plenty of other evidence on that extraction that shows what activity was occurring at 2:27:40? You recall that?
Correct.
And you used the word evidence, correct?
Correct.
But that evidence on the Celebrite program is now gone, correct?
No,
It's not gone?
it's not gone.
So the 2:27:40 timestamp still exists in Celebrite programs?
Sorry, are we talking about the additional evidence that shows what
Oh, no.
happened at 2:27:40?
No, I'm just asking whether.
Okay.
I thought we had that clear, but I thought, is the 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp show up on any Celebrate program as you sit here today?
The decoded value does not show a timestamp for
Thank you.
that artifact.
Sir, does your work include shaping how examiners will see the data when they open it?
Yes.
So you shape how the data is going to be, correct?
Yes, we have
Yes?
ways to create the data so it's usable. Yes.
So the answer is
shape it.
yes, you
Yes.
shape the data.
Yes.
These various forensic tools, Celebrite, Insight Suite, including Physical Analyzer, Magnet Forensics Axiom, these are all tools, and we know that no one has access to the Apple source code on iPhones, correct?
Correct.
And the best source of information about what may be happening inside of an Apple iPhone would be if one could get the source code and look into the source codes to see what's actually happening, correct?
Correct.
So what happens is, in data forensics, because Apple considers it proprietary and people can't access the source code, there's these various data forensic tools that in some ways try to serve as a surrogate, given the fact that there's no access to source code, correct?
Correct.
So the best information would come from the Apple source code, but nobody has access to that, or few people do. Therefore, these other forensic tools are used.
Correct.
So sometimes examiners have to give opinions, like you give, because you don't have access to the source code, correct?
Correct.
So it's your opinion, oftentimes, with regard to ultimate conclusion.
Based on research and testing.
Very real personal investment. And I don't know what to make of Jessica Hyde. There's some reasons to think she might not be so credible. I really don't understand what she's saying 90% of the time. She's a little kind of kooky and weird. I'm just going to wash it out, right? I'm just calling it quits on Jessica Hyde for all the obvious reasons. So we're just looking at Ian Whiffen. And the only reason I bring up Jessica Hyde is because it's clear that Richard Green knows these people. He doesn't know them personally. He knows of them. They are big names in his industry. What would it be like for you to go up against your science idols or the people who are big shots in your industry or in your profession or at your job? Do you want to go up against them in a trial, in a very public trial, and maybe the biggest trial since O.J. Simpson? No, absolutely not. I don't care how much money you're going to pay me. Absolutely not. I'm not doing that, right? No, not a chance. So I think for Richard Green to be up on the stand going up against these people, he knows that they're like a machine. He knows they represent the big boys, Celebrite, right? He knows that they are going to try to discredit him, and he's doing it anyway. What does that tell you about his opinion in this case? Right? Does this guy look like the kind of guy that just is doing it for attention? No, of course not. This is a nice guy. He's doing it because he believes what he's saying is true. Do I trust that Ian Whiffen believes what he's saying is true? No. Nope. Not at all. In fact, what I believe is that Ian Whiffen was given the answer to the problem, find a way to this outcome. And the truth is, even with that and all that's riding on this for Ian Whiffen, what does he do? Well, he's able to discredit the first part, that the search happened at a different time. And that's luckily for Jennifer McCabe, only because she had the wherewithal to do the searches again in the morning, early hours of the morning at 6:23 and 6:24. But he can't come up with a way that they were deleted. Now, one other point I want to make. I don't know exactly what Matt McCabe does. I don't know if it's some kind of technology recruiting firm that he started, but I know that he's made a lot of money, that he partnered with a couple of guys and they started some kind of technology uh, recruiter type firm. Maybe that means he's a businessman, but it also might mean that he has some basic technological skill. And if Matt McCabe has any basic level of technological ability, it could have very easily just been Matt who deleted everything off of her phone that morning. So when Jen says, no, I didn't delete anything, that might be true. She may not have deleted anything. She just had to give her phone to Matt. All right, so there you have it. Now, I'm not sure if I'm any clearer now than I was before I went on this investigative journey to try to figure out about this Google search, but I'm much clearer on what the two sides are arguing. Okay, so there you have the arguments. I hope that's helpful. I guess once again, it's going to come down to who you believe and which side you're more inclined to believe. But again, I would consider the motives of the people testifying. Those are also important. Do with that what you will. Just another day in the saga of Karen Read.
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything.